What's the crack, guys? Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well with everything that is going on in life right now. It just seems we're in a science fiction movie right now. I wish I could say that I am self-isolating, but I still have to work. I am a key worker. I work in a grocery store, so I do still work. I have no idea what day it is. I barely know what date it is. All I know is that I was off today, so I could actually sleep. I'm basically doing nights right now because then that limits our contact with customers and things like that. So as I said, I have no idea what day it is. And that's why we're rocking the glasses today. I just could not be bothered putting contact lenses in. I just did the bare minimal for makeup, and I'm just gonna sit down, do this kind of casually for my wrap up for the books that I read in March. I read a grand total of 9 books in March, which was unreal. If you didn't know, I had a TBR for March where I wanted to read books that Emilia Fox was related to in some way or another, whether she was the narrator or she was in an adaptation of it in some shape or form, whether she was one of the lead characters, one of the secondary characters, or whether one of her characters was in a retelling. In that TBR video, I set myself a goal of reading 7 books. I actually read 6 of those and then 3 other ones that were not related to Emilia. Unfortunately, I had my first DNFs of 2020. If you don't know what a DNF is, that is basically where you do not finish the book. Unfortunately, I quit a couple of books in March. Before I get into all of the Emilia related books that I read in March, I'm going to throw it back to February, where I was talking about a book that I had read in February but I hadn't finished it by the time I was filming it, and I thought I was going to give it 3 stars. This is where my first DNF of the year is, and that is with A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. I got to page 598 and I quit. I just could not take it anymore. I loved the first 200 pages of this. I really did. I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the world, I enjoyed the reveals that were happening to Diana about magic and vampires and demons and all that good stuff. That's usually my wheelhouse. I usually drink that sucker up like a vampire, okay? But it got to the point where the romance was in this now, and other characters were being revealed, and a lot more was being revealed about Diana and her family, and I just could not take it anymore. It all just seemed like far too much. It didn't seem realistic anymore, as much as you can be realistic with a fantasy. I was just underwhelmed by everything that was happening. I was like, okay, you seriously expect me to believe that all of this is now happening? No, I just could not take it. The romance was, oh my god, what was that romance? It was like melodramatic. It was everything that I hated in romances. It was the romance where you're like, oh my god, I can't be apart without you for 5 minutes. I can't be away from your side. And literally Diana cries herself into water because he wouldn't let her go with him to make sure that her own apartment is safe. Girl, catch a grip. So I DNF'd it. I just could not take it anymore, and it just did not read well for me. I am sorry. And I am especially sorry to my best friend because she loves this book and she was so excited that I was finally reading it, and I'm just like, girl, no, I hated it. I'm sorry. So to start off March, I finished listening to the audiobook of Agnes Gray by Anne Bronte. Emilia is the narrator. It was fine. It was 3 stars. It wasn't anything particularly exciting about it or particularly unique about it. It follows Agnes, who becomes a governess to the most ridiculously spoilt and privileged families of the era. I hated all of the children. Literally hated all of the children that Agnes is a governess for. They are spoiled rotten, they are entitled, they think they are so privileged and they can get away with murder just because daddy is rich. But I was happy enough with the ending. I liked that Agnes found her own calling and she had a very happy ending. The audiobook was very good. Emilia did a great job as a narrator. She actually puts on an accent for this one. She doesn't just bog standard read it the way that narrators do, like they narrate in their own voice, but because this book was first person narrative, first person perspective, she put on like a little bit of an accent, which was very, very nice and very different, because I've listened to a bunch of other audiobooks narrated by Amelia, and she doesn't do that. She only puts the accents on for the characters when they are speaking. So with this one, it was very good. I will say that the quality of this audiobook was not good. It was originally on tape, because every so often she would say end of side A, end of side B, and that just threw you for a loop. And because then it was digitized from tape, I was always thinking, what is up with my earphone? I could hear like crackling, and I'm like thinking, is my earphone about to explode in my ear? And then I would take it out and then be like, okay, no, I'm not hearing anything away from it, so it must be the audiobook. Especially then when I listened to something else like music on my earphone, I wasn't hearing that crackling. So I will say, if you go for an audiobook like this one that is older, I think this was recorded in like 2006 or something, just be warned that the quality is just not the best. Next, I have my first non-Amelia related book, and that is The Art of Loish. If you don't know who Loish is, she is an artist, very famous on Instagram, and that's how I came to know of her, because I do have an art account on Instagram, because last 6 months or so I've been really getting back into art and into drawing, and I like getting inspiration, you know, from other people's artwork. And when I realized that the Art of Disney books were a thing, I decided to get some art books from other people that have done them. So this is The Art of Loish, or Lois Van something. Lois Van Varle. Butchered it. This is basically what it says on the tin. Trying to find a way to show this to you guys. So this like just shows her art journey from when she did digital art just with like a Wacom tablet where you couldn't see what you were doing. I had one of those. I had a bamboo one. I think it's Wacom bamboo, and I struggled so much with it. So this just shows her artwork and how she developed her art style and how she does an illustration from start to finish. You know, she has like the blank color, and she adds details and details and details, and then she adds her shade and lights, and it is just fabulous. I love her artwork. She is incredible, and it's just wonderful to just look through books like this. And I give this one 4 stars instead of like the automatic 5. I think it was more 4 because it's not quite the style I was going for, and it was just like more about information than it was actually teaching art. It's not like an art tutorial book, but it's just one of those ones where you just didn't get out as much as you thought. I can tick this off my book bucket list. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I have finally read this sucker in my 30s. I finally can say that I have read Pride and Prejudice, and yes, I am in my 30s. I read this because Amelia played Georgiana Darcy in the Colin Firth adaptation. I think I tried to read this years ago. I think we had like a copy of it years ago from like getting it from a newspaper or something. Tried to read it. I think I got to like the first page and just quit. This time I really went for it. I think I got a lot more out of this than I probably would have had I not been reading it, because Amelia was in an adaptation of it. Because of the way that Georgiana is talked about, everybody kind of talks about her as if she's like the other woman. Everybody talks about her like, oh, she's the deciding one. She's the one that, you know, makes or breaks all of these relationships that Mr. Darcy has. Or that she's this otherworldly creature, that she's, you know, just so perfect and so brilliant, and, you know, she's just as proud as Mr. Darcy. But you realize that that pride that people associate with the Darcys is a shyness. They don't want to talk to people because they haven't been introduced to them, that they don't know who they're talking to, and so like they're relatively shy, they're not prideful, they just are not, you know, social creatures. And that's what I loved about it. I could not get over how much I was really loving these characters. Lydia Bennet is a little shit, by the way. She is a little shit. Oh my god, I want to slap that girl so much reading this. And the Bennets as parents are god awful, because they just let Lydia do that, and they're like, oh well, as long as she gets married, I'm happy. Mr. Bennet doesn't give a crap about what they do, as long as, you know, they're not being social pariahs, they're not being, you know, uncivilized. I was like, what the hell are you two doing as parents? Mrs. Gardner is more of a parent to them than anybody else. Which, by the way, in the Colin Firth adaptation, Joanna David plays Mrs. Gardner, and that is Amelia's mother. I just couldn't get over how much I was loving this. Let me see my notes. In terms of the language, Classics and I usually do not get along. Usually I am tripping over language, trying to figure out what sentences mean. Usually I'm still looking at spark notes on my phone to try to figure out that I read a chapter well and that I read it correctly and that I got the same out of it that the chapter synopsis is saying on spark notes. I got yeses in every single chapter. I was like, yep, I'm following it along just fine. The language didn't trip me up. I wasn't particularly lost at any time, and so that's why I got a lot of enjoyment out of Pride and Prejudice, a lot more than I thought I was going to. And you know what, I think it makes me want to read Persuasion again, because that was the one I read in university, so I think I might start reading more Jane Austen, who knows. After that, I listened to the audiobook of Death Comes as the End by Agatha Christie. I give this 3 stars. If I didn't mention it, I give Pride and Prejudice 4.5. Not the full 5, 4.5. But Death Comes as the End is set during ancient Egypt. I can't remember who they say the pharaoh is, but it follows a priest, Imhotep, and his children and his family, and he brings a concubine home and she is killed. She is an absolute shite to the children. She's an absolute terror, and she ends up dead. Other deaths come to the family and they're like trying to figure out what the hell is going on. It's a bit of a ride. Amelia does the narration for it and she does a very good job. I will say that towards the end of the audiobook, there is one name. I was like, if she says that name one more fucking time. Hang on, I gotta look up that character's name. Renaissam. The way she pronounced it made it sound like Renaissance, but Renaissance. I listened to it at like a higher speed, so that probably made it sound like a Renaissance. But after a while, I was hearing Renaissance. I was like, if I hear that one more fucking time. I had been listening to it like for like near 6 hours straight by that point. I was ready to go. The story, it was fine. I wasn't particularly enthralled by what was going on. It was enjoyable. I liked the characters, I liked some of the twists and turns, but at times there were points where I was like confused as to who was what to whom, because you know the way ancient Egypt's intermarried and all that jazz. I was like, okay, is that the daughter, or are they like daughter and son, are they husband and wife kind of dealy, or was it something like that? But I think it was pretty straightforward in terms of our ways of relationships. So it was enjoyable. It was okay for my first Agatha Christie read. I think I might read some more. I do have Murder on the Orient Express, I think behind here somewhere. I'm glad I read it. It was fine. After that, I read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I actually loved this. I give this 4 stars, and there was a point where I actually was going to DNF this because I was not liking the characters. The protagonist, the heroine, you never know her name because it's all from her perspective, and everything that she learns, you're learning along with her. And I was like thinking, oh my god, Mr. De Winter, I think his name is Charles, he was so bad. Like at the start he was like, oh, he's so cute, he's so suave and debonair and very nice, and then once he gets to Manderley, he like a switch is flipped and he's like completely different. He's like ignoring her. Everybody is being like really unfair towards the heroine because like they're all comparing her to Rebecca. The housemaid, the one that is in charge of the household, she reminded me so much of O'Brien from Downton Abbey. I was waiting for her to put like the soap underneath the bath like she did with Cora. I could just see O'Brien from Downton Abbey when it comes to Bates, I think her name is. It was uncanny, and you could see where things have drawn inspiration from Rebecca in terms of other stories that are like this. Like I said with O'Brien, she just reminded me of the housekeeper in this book. But once you get the reveal, oh my god, that put this book in a completely different light. I was loving it. I think I devoured the last 200 pages because I was like, oh my gosh, I need to find out what actually happens. I need to find out if this happens that I think is going to happen, or like I don't want this to happen and I need to find out immediately if this is going to happen. When I was struggling with this, I actually looked up some Goodreads reviews, and some of the people that I do follow on BookTube had reviewed it, and Murphy Napier, or Napier I think is how she pronounces her last name, she wrote a review and she was like, once I find out the reveal and everything that I knew then, it just makes me want to reread it so that I know exactly where it's going. And so that spurred me on, and once I got to that point I was like, girl, you were right. I just could not believe it. It was so suspenseful now that I know what is happening, and is just chef's kiss. Not full 5-star chef's kiss, but a damn good chef's kiss. On to my second DNF of the year, and the first one related to something to do with Amelia Fox. I'm so sorry about this one, but The Wreckage by Robin Morgan Bentley. I knew going into this book that it was not going to be my cup of tea. I knew it wasn't my usual genre, but Amelia did the audiobook for it and she really enjoyed this book, and so I was like, well, I will give it a shot. Shot and a miss. Oh my god. I could not get past even like the halfway stage of this audiobook. Like with this audiobook there are 3 narrators, but 2 of them do the main perspectives. You have Alice's perspective and then Ben's perspective. With Ben, the narrator was so bad. I have never had a narrator that poorly for a long time. Like the last time I had a narrator be that bad was when I was listening to A Song of Ice and Fire audiobooks, and this narrator, Roy Dotrice, made Daenerys sound like a 60-year-old woman from Cornwall. She's 13. Daenerys is 13. So with this narrator for Ben, the way that he spoke other characters was as if somebody had been told to read that line in the middle of English class. You know when you were reading out extracts in English class? It was like that. It was not like a professional audiobook narrator. I could not get over that. Even when I was listening to it at the speed that I was. I think I listened to this at 1.75 times the speed. I think even if I slowed it, it would still sound as bad. I remember one of the character went to his principal of the school that we worked. He was like, okay, Ben, let's get this started. Excuse me, what principal talks like that when it's like a back to work kind of conversation? It was so bad. The characters themselves are atrocious human beings. Yes, I can understand where Alice is coming from because her husband was a shite, but the way that she went about everything, no, the way Ben kind of then ingratiated himself to this family, he kind of just bulldozed his way in and made himself comfortable in such a short space of time. Nope, I did not like that at all. I could see where this was heading at some point, and I was like, if this happens, then I'm tapping out. I'm like going, abort, abort, abort. It happened. I was like, they're gonna shag. They're gonna shag on the couch. It started, and then Alice said, don't you find me attractive? I was like, abort. Abort, 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 abort. I could not deal with that. So I was like, nope, I'm quitting this. I cannot handle this anymore. Even Amelia's performance in this audiobook was not up to par. It was not like the other audiobooks that I have heard from her, and this was her most recent one. It was not a good performance. It was nothing compared to Jackdaws. It was nothing compared to Melmoth, which were my two favourites that I've listened to the most recently. It just was not good. The book was not well written, in my opinion. If I had had this physically, I would have just thrown it across the room. And then the directing by the director of the audiobook was just atrocious. Like, if I were a director of that audiobook, I would have told him, no, do that differently. No, do that differently. Nope. No. It just was not good. And I just could not handle it anymore. And I just quit it. And the second of my DNFs of an Amelia related book, The Once and Future King by T.H. White. This is a bind up of all of the King Arthur books that start with The Sword and the Stone, The Witch in the Wood, The Ill-Made Knight, The Candle in the Wind, and The Book of Merlin. I quit this at about, I can't even remember, the bookmark's gone, about like 500 odd pages. I was probably a good chunk of the way through The Ill-Made Knight. I will say The Sword and the Stone is my favourite one out of these ones. It is pretty much like the Disney movie. You can see where Disney really took their inspiration from this in terms of Wart, Arthur, Merlin, and Archimedes. Archimedes actually talks in this, and he's just as sassy as he is in the Disney movie. I loved it. There even is a line straight from this book into the animated movie, and that is blasphemy to Bermuda, even though in the animated movie he says blow me to Bermuda. But it came straight out of this book. Even when Merlin turns Wart into a fish, when he turns him into a bird, that all happens in The Sword and Stone and the animated movie. Then you move on to The Witch in the Wood, where Morgause makes her appearance as Queen of the Orkneys. That's when you find out that they are brother and sister, half brother, half sister, and this is where you find out where Merlin is a conniving little bastard. If this book did anything, it was just to cement how much I hate Arthur and Merlin in terms of the King Arthur legend. Arthur is the bastard child of Uther Pendragon and Igraine, the Countess of Cornwall. She is happily married to the Earl of Cornwall and has 3 daughters, Morgana, Morgan, Elaine, and Morgause. But Uther takes a shine to Igraine. Merlin decides to make this happen. Uther sends the Earl of Cornwall off to battle and gets killed. And then Uther has his way with Igraine. She gets pregnant with Arthur. He then sends Arthur off to be fostered by Sir Ector and his son Kay, who is to be a knight when he grows up. Arthur believes he's an orphan all these years. He's called the Wart. He's been downtrodden. He's been put down all of his life, and he just thinks, oh, he'll just amount to a squire. But because he is a bastard child, he cannot be king of England. He's illegitimate. So then Merlin's like, what will I do? Oh, I'll put a sword in the stone and write on it, whosoever can take this sword from the stone shall be king of all England. Conveniently, Arthur forgets Kay's sword. The inn is locked, so then the only other sword that he can get is the one in the stone. He pulls it out, becomes king of England. Conveniently, after Uther dies. Conniving little bastard. Then in the Ill-Made Knight you find out about Lancelot, and he has spent most of his life wanting to be a knight of the Round Table and to be Arthur's BFF and to just do quests on behalf of King Arthur. Then he falls in love with Guinevere, and he's like, oh, I can't fall in love with the queen, so I have to go on this year-long quest to rid myself of these feelings. So he goes on this quest, and he gets drunk and sleeps with this other girl, gets her pregnant, believing that she's Guinevere. Then when he realizes, oh, that's actually not Guinevere, he goes back to Camelot, finds out that Arthur is away, and basically takes her by the hand and goes up to the bedroom. Arthur has suspicions that Lancelot and Guinevere are sleeping together, but he's just like, well, as long as I don't see it, it's fine. These people are garbage. They are garbage characters. I hated them so much. The only one that I liked was Morgause, because at least she is conniving and like almost like emotionless towards her sons, but at least she owns it. She knows she's like that, and she's happy that she's like that. This whole book is anachronistic to a fault. It's mentioning things that should not be mentioned around King Arthur's time. A lot of things are from different eras. Robin Hood is from the 13th, 14th century. King Arthur is around the 12th century, I think. It mentions ballet, which was not created until like the 1400s. And it references El Mort d'Arthur by the original author so much. I'm like, how is this even real? It doesn't even sound right at any time. It's just, I hated it. I was listening to the audiobook along with it because I figured that I would get through this a whole lot faster. There was a point in The Sword and Stone where it completely deviated from what was written here. It like Archimedes took Arthur to see Athena, whereas in this book it's where Merlin just turns him into a bird. He doesn't take him to see Athena, he takes him to see somebody else. It's so strange. I just could not take it anymore, and I got to the point where Morgause is killed, so I was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. And because I hated that book so much, I decided to give Queen of Camelot a miss, because this is more about Guinevere. I never liked Guinevere in any tellings. Even in the Adventures of Merlin, I wasn't all that fond of her. Morgause is quite a key player in this, and Mordred is a factor in here. I just figured, no, I will cut my losses, because nothing is going to make me like Arthur or Merlin. I just do not like them. I just cannot. I like them in the Adventures of Merlin when they're not such little bastards, but I still do not like them at the same time. They are not the heroes of that story. Like, how is King Arthur so romanticized with a capital R? How is that so romantic with Lancelot and Guinevere? They are cheaters. They're cheaters. Like, they know that they are cheating. Even in The Once and Future King, Guinevere, she's like saying to Lancelot, oh, we can't be together because the mother of your child is here with your child, but you can't sleep with her. Excuse me, what? I just cut my losses with that one. So to get over that, I read another art book. This is the art of Pernilla. This person. I love her artwork, so whenever I found out that she was making another art book, I just had to pre-order it. I got mine off of Amazon, but there was like more of a Kickstarter incentive going, but I just went the cheap route. I absolutely adore her artwork. Just look at this goodness. And this one was like the full 5 stars because I felt like I got a lot more inspiration from this, because Pernilla's style is very much like my own, and I take a lot of inspiration from her. She is very, very inspirational to me, and so I loved reading this. I actually look at it near enough every single day when I draw, just to get inspiration and to try to do like a style study, that kind of thing. So absolutely loved this. And the last book that I read in March, number 9, as I said, it was not Queen of Camelot, was actually Supernova by Marissa Meyer. This is the final book in the Renegades trilogy. And oh my god, this was 5 stars. I was thinking it was going to be 4.5, because like the romance kind of takes a bit of a step up in this one. And there were points of it where I was like, oh my god, come on. But then, Marissa gave me everything that I wanted in battles, in fights, in twists and turns. I was hooked on this. I was reading like 100 plus pages a day. That was when I was like getting working nights and then sleeping during the day. I was getting through this because I could not put it down. It was so, so good. I think it's my favorite out of the trilogy. I think it goes Supernova, Renegades, and then Arch Enemies. It was so, so good. I loved Nova. Her change, her character arc was phenomenal. What happened to her in this book was phenomenal. Adrian, he was fine, but at the same time, I was loving him. all of these characters and their abilities and the twists and turns and the politics in this were just so good. I could not get over it. And then there were some epic battles in this, and I loved everything about it. There were parts where I was like, oh shit, oh snap, oh insert expletive here. It was so good. And that epilogue, Mercy, you better be announcing something soon, girl, because yep, I need it. Give it to me right now, because oh my god, if you've not heard about the Renegade series, where you've been, it's set in this world, Gatland City, and it is basically, what if these superheroes were the powers that be? What if they were the police and the justice system, and they were in the medical realm? What if they were like everything, but there were still human beings that did not have abilities around? And that's where Nova becomes an anarchist. There are renegades, which are the goodies, because then they rose up and seized power from the anarchists, and they have been the ones that have been the seat of power. But Nova is an anarchist because at the start of Renegades something happens, and then she's like, we cannot rely on renegades to be there when we need them. We need, to stand up for ourselves, blah, 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 blah. And so then she infiltrates the renegades, and oh my gosh, this series is so good! And it just like begs the question of like, what happens when superheroes are the justice system in the world? Can they be trusted? Are they really good? Are they in it for themselves, or is it much more I'm trying to think of the word. All I can think of is like in the Big Bang Theory, like as sweet as you're. I'm trying to grasp that word that I'm thinking of. Dang it. Or are they doing it for like the greater good? I don't know. It's not the word I'm thinking of, but it's one I'm going to go with because this video is going to be hella long. It was just the perfect way to round off the month, and a bit of brain bleach for the Watching Future King, because oh my gosh, was this amazing. So there you have it, guys. Those are all of the books that I read in March, and all of the books that I read for Amelia March. I had so much fun reading this. I finally can tick off 2 books off of the bucket list of books: Pride and Prejudice and Rebecca. High five self. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what books you read in March. Have you read any of these, or do you want to read any of them now, or some of them now, off your TBR? Let me know in the comments down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!